Zyra's identity involves her plants, transforming the map around her into a deadly garden to all those who oppose her. So what if we crank this up to 100 and have her plants on a full second cooldown? This all started around March-April time when Diamond content creator Purer Erzbengel mentioned full ability Zyra on the Zyra's subreddit's Discord. It wasn't anything particularly special, but something noticeable was the fact that your W had a very short cooldown and was extremely spammable. And after playing with it for a couple of games, I can definitely say it's extremely fun. There will be slight variations to what he typically brings compared to what I suggest, but this is because he is a mid laner whereas I play Zyra support. Starting off with runes, it is a standard comet page with Arcane Comet, Mana Flow Band / Nimbus Cloak, Transcendent, Scorch with either Taste of Blood and Treasure Hunt and Domination, or Presence of Mind and Coup de Grace / Cutdown and Precision. Mana Flow Band and Presence of Mind will help significantly with your mana as you will be spamming abilities, however Treasure Hunter will allow you to reach your power spikes faster. It is also important that you take Transcendence and the ability haste shard, as they give 18 ability haste from runes alone, which is around 15% CDR. Then carrying on with the build, the first divergence is that you buy Lucidity boots. Sorks are normally the way to go, however you want as much ability haste as possible, so paying 950 gold for 20 ability haste and 12 summoner haste is way too efficient to pass up on. And from runes and boots alone, you already have over 25% cooldown reduction. Liandry's is the mythic of choice for this build. Liandry's is already as staple on Zyra as it synergizes super well with her damage over time plants, but what we're really looking for is that 20 ability haste that I grant, as well as the 5 ability haste mythic passive. And by this point, you should already have your Spell Thief's Edge upgraded into a Shard of True Highs, which counts as a legendary item. So by only one completed item, you already have 43 ability haste, or around 30% CDR. From here you can diverge into a couple options. Purer tends to go for Rylai's next. Although it doesn't provide any CDR, Rylai has a passive slow which grants utility. This has increased value considering the amount of ability haste you have in this build, so having more plants means more potential to slow. And another benefit that allows him to be more flexible with his build path, so if he feels like he doesn't need the extra ability haste, he can always opt out into something else instead. If you don't want Rylai second, you can instead rush Cosmic Drive, which would be the next item instead. Cosmic Drive grants the most amount of ability haste for a mage, and also a considerable amount of movement speed. Ever since its rework in 13.8, its movement speed no longer declays, which is excellent considering Zyra's ability to teamfight. This means you can weave through teamfights and dodge things easier. Something to note however is that Zyra's plants do not activate spell dance, so you need to consistently auto or hit the enemies with spells during the fight to maintain it. But this really shouldn't be an issue. The final item is Vigilant Wardstone, which is only accessible for supports. Upon obtaining this item and being full build, with Rylai you should have around 138 ability haste, or 58% CDR, which is 13% higher than what was achievable before season 11. This means that your W is on a 4.2 second cooldown. And if you want, instead of Rylai's, if you didn't want it, you can get Zhonya's instead, which grants you up to 155 ability haste, or 61% CDR, which allows you to have plants on a 3.9 second cooldown. For skill order, Purer tends to go for EQW and to put 2 more points into Q before maxing in EWQ. However, this is mostly a mid lane thing as you need your Q to help farm and thin wave, so for support you can instead just opt for whatever you want level 1 to 3, I typically go QWE, and then maxing EWQ taking the point in your ult whenever you can. For the pros of this build, your W is on a very short cooldown, so you never need to face check a bush, and you have very strong vision control. It's very tilting to play against. Zyra is already quite tilting to play against with her current number of plants. This build increases that tilt factor by a significant amount. You also get a lot of utility with this build as your E is on a 4 second cooldown, so you might be able to get an extra 1 or 2 roots per fight, and with your ult being on a 30 second cooldown, you should have it every single time anyone wants to fight. And higher ability haste also technically lowers the cooldown of Comet, as that means you have more spells and you have more plants, meaning that Comet gets refreshed even quicker, so more ability haste, more Comet. However, there are some cons which are quite big actually. It's an expensive build as Cosmic Drive costs 3000 gold, so you may not be able to complete this on a support's budget. And you can also get out of mana very quickly, although this can be worked around with Presence of Mind. Needing to dedicate a whole sub-rune and not being allowed to go something like Zombie Ward can be quite bad. You no longer have the early game power spike of Sorks, which is something that Zyra benefits from very hard, because instead you have to opt in for Lucidity, which isn't bad in itself, but it just means that your kill pressure early game goes down just a little bit. And also if you're against something like an Irelia, then having more plants will do absolutely nothing for you as she one-shots them anyway. There isn't anything particularly different about how you play with this build, as this is just a typical Zyra build where you just plants. Yeah. And this is kind of what this video is about. It's not anything groundbreaking, it's a very normal Zyra build bar one item, but it's just something I wanted to highlight just in case you ever just wanted to have more plants. And in conclusion, if you do want to focus on your plants, zoning enemies hard while sacrificing a little bit of your early game power, then you should consider trying this build out. And if you want to see more of this kind of stuff where I focus around Zyra and other supports, then be sure to like and subscribe, as I'll be doing more of that. And also a big shout out to Purer Erzbengel, who gave me this build idea and also taught me a couple of things about this on a conversation I had with him. He also streams and does YouTube content, so be sure to check him out as well, and I'll link all of his stuff in the description.